Hello and welcome to The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor. Earlier this week, we got a look back at 2023 in music and film. Today, we're looking ahead to the conversations we're all going to be having around the kitchen table in 2024. There's no doubt about it, we're heading into a contentious presidential election year. And while there are several ongoing global conflicts to be concerned about, Americans have their plates full with concerns here at home. What are the hot topics going to be in the new year? Here to help me dig into it is USA Today national political correspondent Phillip M. Bailey. Phillip, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Dana, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good.
So let's start with the two frontrunners for the 2024 presidential election. The most likely scenario at this point is it's going to be a rematch. How are the voters feeling about that?
Well, look, there's a lot that could happen, a lot of hypotheticals that could be thrown into the mix here. But if you look at the polls and what most prognosticators think as of now, looks like that President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump will likely have a 2020 rematch. And I can tell you, most Americans aren't jazzed about a 2020 rematch, no matter their political leanings or the issues they care about the most. A recent Economist YouGov poll in December found significant majorities oppose the idea of Biden or Trump running. Another survey done by the Associated Press showed that roughly 57% of U.S. adults would be dissatisfied with either man being nominated by their respective party. How do you engage them when there are so many people who aren't interested, whether it's because of Biden's waning popularity or because of Trump's criminal indictments and very controversial statements and comments if he returns to the White House? There's such a malaise out there that I think that 2024 is really going to challenge how political parties and political activist organizations engage those voters and get them energized.
Well, then there's also the issue of the two candidates' ages. Biden at 81 is already the country's oldest president. Trump at 77 isn't far behind. Earlier in the year, we started a national conversation about the ages of members of Congress with regards to their mental fitness. Both the late Senator Dianne Feinstein and current Senator Mitch McConnell showing signs of mental fatigue, forgetfulness, lapses in sharpness. What do you hear from voters on this issue?
I guess people are paying more attention to the age issue because of members of Congress, but also I think because, again, of that malaise over the rematch. People will say, well, wait a minute. Isn't Donald Trump also up there in age? Isn't he hovering around age 80? But people wear 80 differently, right? And I think that one thing you hear from Trump supporters and the Republican Party is that, Donald Trump, one thing he's not accused of, he's accused of a lot of things, 91 indictments, but he's not accused of not being engaged, not being vigorous in his political engagements. So I'm very interested to see how the Biden campaign and the White House manages this, right? Because the president has a really important day job, but he's also going to have to be around the country and campaigning. We've already seen reports about how he's trying to mitigate that. He has also struggled with stuttering his whole life, so that could be an issue at play here.
Okay, so Phillip, what do you think is the issue that will dominate conversations the most in 2024? I'm guessing the economy, right?
Definitely. 2/3 of voters, according to polls, they rank that as their top issue. Now, the question is, what does that mean? Stock prices hitting record level highs. We've seen issues with, unemployment going down to historic lows. But the economy is different for different people, right? You're not someone who's trading stocks and living in that world. Inflation has impacted your life. And even though the Biden administration will point to the fact that the Inflation Reduction Act did have some benefits, we certainly saw inflation slow. But I think there is a overall question of purchasing power that Republicans certainly dive into during the holiday season, reminding people how much more it costs to pay for Thanksgiving dinner or for Christmas gifts than it was maybe a year or 4 or 5 years ago. And I think Trump will certainly lean into that. Whether or not he's the nominee is still to be seen.
Well, a big issue for Democrats, and I'm wondering about, is their ability to make their "look what we did, the economy is really good now" message stick with voters. Despite inflation coming down, hiring staying strong in 2023, voters just aren't buying it. And why do you think that is?
Look, I think President Biden has done as much as he can to pull those levers of policy levers and prescriptions to improve his popularity and approval ratings. We'll see maybe once the Republican primary begins to consolidate more and the Biden administration starts focusing its message in spending and Democratic groups and voters get a little more engaged. But right now, it does not look good for the president or the Democrats. And certainly, I think we have to look at the increasing violence and skirmishes between Israel and Gaza, where you're seeing images come through that are pretty gut-wrenching. Let's be honest here. After the attack on Israel by Hamas on October 7th, that has divided this country, but particularly divided the political left and Democrats. You have many left-leaning activist organizations and individuals who are saying they can never see themselves voting for Joe Biden, particularly with Muslim American voters who have pledged they will never vote for Joe Biden because of his support and the administration's support of Israel, even though Biden, as of late, has been more critical of Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. We don't really know how this is going to play out. I don't know if there's any more bag of tricks policy-wise that the president can pull out. He does not have control of the House. He's negotiating right now with House Republicans getting more funding for the Ukraine war against Russia. And you're seeing there a trade on border policy, which could further infuriate progressives. So there's some big issues out there where Biden's constituency, his core constituency, may feel even further betrayed going into this election. It's not looking good for the president at this point.
Well, and then abortion rights remain at the forefront of voters' minds, having played a big role in the midterms last year. How might that issue play out on the national stage in the new year?
Well, if there is one issue, Dana, that Democrats are certainly hoping to lean into, and the president and other Democrats nationwide who are running down ballot think is a benefit to them, it is the question of reproductive rights in 2024. We've had multiple states now, my home state of Kentucky, Montana, California, et cetera, who have taken up, Ohio most recently, taken up this question of abortion and ballot initiatives. Abortion is going to be at the forefront. We've seen from these Republican debates, Dana, that Republicans really haven't figured out how to talk about abortion. I talked to Liz Mayer, former RNC spokeswoman, an advisor to the late John McCain, and she says at this point there are 6 different variations of what pro-life means in the current GOP. So Democrats certainly feel that Republicans are on their heels with this issue, but given the Supreme Court's decision in 2022, you can hear and you can feel the sigh, but also the hesitancy and the trepidation that a lot of Democrats have and what the Supreme Court could be deciding in these coming months on that abortion bill.
Okay, so let's turn now to the dangers of AI. There have been a lot of conversations on the Hill and across the pond about how we can put some solid guardrails in place. What are the discussions voters are having about AI centered around?
Well, look, after the 2020 election, the big theme out of that was not only basic attacks on our democracy, but information, disinformation, misinformation being spewed out, oftentimes by the former president and mainstream political actors. And people just don't know what to believe, right? We've seen now with Elon Musk purchasing what used to be Twitter, now known as X. People are getting a lot of their information, not necessarily from newspapers or mainstream news organizations, not even from television, but often from their phones, often from social media apps. There's a Democrat running for Congress now who's used AI to engage voters for robocalls. And some who see using artificial intelligence for good, but also understanding that it can be used for nefarious purposes. So in the midst of this, where Americans are more and more wary of the information they're getting, now we're getting information now from artificial intelligence that has become very sophisticated. I can remember a former congressman saying to me that the problem in Washington is that this artificial intelligence and technology far outpaces the laws and regulations we can catch up with. Will we see after this election or in the midst of this election for those legislatures passing laws to regulate and forcing organizations or parties or campaigns to say this came from artificial intelligence? I do think you will see political consultants, strategists, and candidates using AI a whole lot more and disclosing that to voters. I was talking to one of the consultants who's working with that candidate in Pennsylvania using artificial intelligence for robocalls. They were telling me that, look, voters do not like to be misled. They don't like to be tricked. So if you're going to use artificial intelligence, you better tell them up front.
Well, and that leads me to this issue that might still be animating voters' thoughts since 2020, and that's democracy itself. A lot of the electorate still believes the 2020 election was stolen. How might that issue impact the vote in 2024?
Well, look, we all remember those images from January 6, 2021, when rioters attacked the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to overturn the 2020 election results that Joe Biden won. We've had elections since then, the midterm elections, where we had a lot of election deniers running for key offices. A lot of those candidates lost, but a lot of them won too in safer gerrymandered districts. So I think this is going to be the first national election since January 6th. There have been a lot of protections and different initiatives passed. I would point to the state of Michigan, where Democrats took control of that state for the first time in 40 years. You've seen a lot of states like Minnesota, Michigan, and others pass early voting and different protections for poll workers. Remember how they were being harassed and attacked in both during and the aftermath of 2020 as well. So this is going to be a major test. This is our first national election where a lot of our fundamentals of our democracy have been challenged. And also the campaign is going to probably be about, if Trump ends up being the Republican nominee, certainly the Biden campaign and Democrats at large are going to paint him as a threat to American democracy. Here's the individual who basically spearheaded and led and inspired a lot of those individuals to riot in the Capitol, seeking to return to office while he's also facing a criminal indictment, both at federal and state level, for his actions in the aftermath of 2020.
I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation with you into 2024. Thanks for being on the Excerpt, Phillip.
No problem, Dana. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.